Hey guys, this is chapter 2 in our Principles of Emergency Services course, the book Introduction to Fire Protection and Emergency Services. Hey, I was going to do just a narrated PowerPoint like I did last time, and then I looked at the PowerPoint, and it seems lengthy, but I think it may be easier if you just go through it yourself. Basically, it describes a lot of, we're talking about all the different positions and careers and pathways in the fire service. You may be surprised at how many that there are, but there's something for everyone in the fire service. And so I decided just to kind of hit the highlights a little bit of making sure that we understood a couple of things. First of all, keep in mind that this book is the ideal. And it's going to say things like, this is so-and-so doesn't do this, but they do this. And in your department, you may be thinking, well, this guy does everything. So just, especially when it comes time for test taking, that kind of skill, just make sure that you are thinking about what the book is telling us and not the way things may be in the real world. We know that they're always a lot different. So just kind of keep that in mind. And do keep in mind that one of the things I wanted to say that in a fire department, it takes everybody. I used to say when I was with Hall County Fire Services for 10 years, and from the receptionist out front to our EMS billing people to the quartermaster to from training all the way out to the stations and up to the chief, that it takes everybody. Everybody's there for the same reason. At Hall County, our mission statement was the prevention and mitigation of injuries, deaths, and property loss. And that's the reason, and it takes all of those people to do that. No one job is more important than the other. It takes everybody. And so I want you to remember that as you go through your career and as you get started in your career, is just because someone is a lieutenant versus a firefighter doesn't mean that what they do is more important. They may have a little more knowledge, they obviously have more responsibility, and with that comes accountability, but it has nothing to do with the level of importance in the workplace. So firefighters usually start out as recruits. That in some places, especially, and we're talking paid departments in a lot of ways. The volunteer departments might be a little bit different. I know in the volunteer departments, there's something called support firefighter. That may be your recruit type firefighter or trainee type firefighter. And so as this recruit starts out, they may be on a probationary period. It may be in some departments that they don't automatically go to their recruit class or recruit training first. In smaller departments, they may have to get several people together before they're able to get that person in there. So there may be some on-the-job training that takes place during this time. And then, of course, they can promote up to firefighter, or they are maybe taken off probation and they're a full-fledged firefighter. Lots of different tasks. This is the standard entry level is firefighter for most fire departments. They may or may not require that firefighter 1 certification. You may get it within that recruit time frame. You may achieve it during that. But the duties are many of the basic firefighter. I'm not talking EMT or paramedic. I'm just talking a basic firefighter. There may be things such as, taking care of the apparatus. There may be, of course, responding to alarms, cleaning up, assisting on medical calls. You may, somebody may show you how to use the oxygen, or you're using your first aid skills or first responder skills, whatever you may have. You may be doing inspections. You may be practicing for driving, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different tasks that you may be learning about and doing during your tenure as a firefighter. Of course, in most departments, the driver operator comes a little bit later. You may be a relief driver. You may have to get that within your first year of training, or maybe you can't get it before you've been there a year. Some departments have different things, but that's kind of the next step up. Of course, when we look at folks, and by the way, I'm looking over here on my computer screen, so you know I'm not like glancing off in the distance. But there's also, of course, firefighter EMT, firefighter paramedic, and those individuals have that double layer of training as a firefighter, but also training as an EMT, an emergency medical technician, or a paramedic. So again, that person may work on an ambulance if that fire department has fire department EMS based department. Excuse me, while I stumble over my words. So you've got to maintain that certification as well. When we look at, we can't forget our wildland firefighters, Forestry Service here in Georgia, the United States, the National Forestry Service. In many departments, that is a job title or task all its own. That's where you may get into a heavy equipment specialist. A firefighter in a wildland firefighter, they operate heavy equipment. They're dozer operators in addition to firefighters. They're not structural firefighters in the way that we think about it, but they have, they may be asked to build a fire break. With that, they may, or they may be using hand tools. That may be what their job is, a part of a hand line, or a heavy equipment operator. So there's a lot of different tasks, especially entry level task within the fire service as you're first coming in. There's lots of different standards. I always wanted to be a wildland firefighter. I can't say always, but as I got into the fire service, I wish I had taken the opportunity early on to be part of a hotshot crew, but it's very strenuous. And as we talked about in the last chapter, the PAC test is very strenuous as well. It's hard work. It's to me the last of the real firefighters. It's just them in the fire. So anyway, that was kind of an aside there as well. So there's a lot of different positions that we see. There may be safety type positions for people that have retired. Again, forestry. There's a lot of civilian positions within the fire service, and this is where a lot of people think, I hate the sworn and unsworn personnel, but I guess that's the way of distinguishing between that. What you find in a lot of areas is that there are civilian employees in perhaps the Prevention Bureau. Now, this does not mean that they don't understand the concept of prevention. Maybe they're fire protection engineers. Certainly, our inspectors could be that. Plans reviewers could be fire inspection engineers. They could be from from the building department. They could be builders or architects or something like that, where it's a specialized field. I always said when I was doing fire and life safety education that there was a lot of teachers who came out of classroom teaching and would come into the fire service as that educator. They were the best because they knew how to teach. It wasn't always about fire. And so if we have these other positions, these civilian positions, they certainly fill a very valuable role. Your book mentions a fire hazardous materials program specialist. This might be a chemist, someone that is trained in hazardous materials, or environmental health is something else to think about. So there's a lot of different aspects. You may have training specialists. Now, most of the time, our folks in training are sworn personnel. They are firefighters, but there's nothing saying that they have to be. But there's a lot of different tasks that go along with that. And again, I'm going to let you review all of that on the PowerPoint slides and in your book. Dispatcher, of course, telecommunications operator, whatever you want to call it. These are the first of the first responders. Such an important task. And I always had the greatest admiration for people that worked in our 911 dispatch centers, because I don't think I could not be removed from everything that was going on. I can't imagine talking to people down. I can't imagine hearing what they have to hear. I always had the greatest respect, I still do, for individuals in that field of dispatch. And it's not for everyone, but it's also, again, it's a task just as important as those out there doing the work. Those that are in the field or boots on the ground, whatever you want to call it. Without our dispatchers, we wouldn't be anywhere. There's other types of, when we look at, those are jobs in the public sector, and that's where we think about it most of all. Most fire departments are public, meaning they're government, municipal operated. You work for the people or the citizens. But there's also other private sector jobs where the fire service personnel or that fire service knowledge could be helpful. One, of course, is just as a firefighter. Many industries today have their own fire departments. Maybe they're big enough to have their own fire departments, or they're remote enough that they want to have their own fire departments and their own equipment. But there's a lot of that out there where people work in a private fire department. Insurance companies, again, taking that fire service knowledge and applying it to other areas such as insurance, protection, fire protection industry, that fire protection systems engineer, and then, of course, fire protection system maintenance. All of those things have to take place as well. So there's a lot that goes on in the fire department, and go kind of read through those slides to give you an idea about what the tasks are, the way it's divided out. Big departments may be like that. I never worked for a really huge department, a City of Atlanta department or a Washington, D.C. department, anything like that. But there are, usually in most departments, everybody wears different hats. One person's wearing all of these hats. But in a place where you can divide it out, as people increase in their level of knowledge and their experience, they are moved up that ladder. But just keep in mind that there is something for everyone. There is a place for everyone. Everyone has their tasks, their jobs to do, and we need to make sure that we do it. So I'm going to end this there. This is a short chapter, and I was kind of surprised when I saw how many PowerPoints there were. But just like I say, read through those, get a feel for who does what, as according to the book, and you can also compare it to your own department, who does what in your department, and see how they differ. There may be changes, or there may be recommendations that could be made. You may see something that you're not doing or is not being done in your department that you could do. So, if you have any questions, let me know. Again, thanks for your attention.